together against Yahweh and against his anointed, saying, let us break their shackles asunder and cast away their chain from us. He that sitteth in the heavens shall laugh. Yahweh shall have them in derision.
All right, hello, good morning. I'll put up the whatever later. All right, so welcome to Line by Line Bible Studies. We're continuing in the Psalms. Psalm 51. I'm sorry, Psalm 52. Psalm 52, of course. Verse 1. Maskil, a psalm of David. When Doeg the Edomite came and told Saul, and said unto him, David is come to the house of Ahimelech. Why boastest thou self in mischief, O mighty man? The goodness of God endureth continually. Thy tongue deviseth mischiefs like a sharp razor, working deceitfully. Thou lovest evil more than good, and lying rather than to speak righteousness. Selah. Thou lovest all devouring words, O thou deceitful tongue. God shall likewise destroy thee forever. He shall take thee away, and pluck thee out of thy dwelling place, and root thee out of the land of the living. Selah, or Selah, whatever. I don't know if you're supposed to say it. You're probably not supposed to say it, but whatever. We're going to say it because it's in the text. We're not singing it in the ancient form. There was a pause there. Hold on a second here. I just noticed we have quite a bit of lag. Okay, hold on. We'll fix that. We're just going to continue with without the audio for a second here. I'm just going to finish reading this, and we'll come back with the video in just a second. All right, so after the Selah, verse 4, no, we did that, verse 5, verse 6. The righteous also shall see and fear, and shall laugh at him. Lo, this is the man that made not God his strength, but trusted in the abundance of his riches, and strengthened himself in his wickedness. But I am like a green olive tree in the house of God. I trust in the mercy of God forever and ever. I will praise thee forever, because thou hast done it, and I will wait on thy name, for it is good before thy saints. All right, hold on. That wasn't the best reading. But let me just get the video back up here. Hopefully yeah, that's much better. I'm not going to put up a whole study there where the audio's off by a few seconds. That'll drive people nuts, especially when it's that bad. No, this is fine. It's always a little off, but whatever. If it's close enough, you can, people don't, there has to be a certain amount of offset before your brain picks up on it. And, you know, especially unless you know, of course, if you're trying to read lips, you notice immediately. So, of course, if you can hear, you don't need to read lips, so that's kind of unrelated. All right, so Doeg the Edomite. This incident is from early in David's career, so to speak. Well, it's basically from the time that Saul began to become openly aggressive towards David. He had been nurturing resentment because of David's success, much like Cain and Abel. I mean, it's kind of like the Cain and Abel story, except here the king is sort of in the position of like a father almost, or adopted father, because David is his son-in-law. You know, he gives him his daughter to wife. I'm sorry. I was about to... Let me mute that again. Okay, so, you know, as he's fleeing, he comes to the house of Ahimelech, and this is from first. I looked it up. 1 Samuel 21. He comes to the house of Ahimelech, and there he talks to Ahimelech the priest. And let's bring up the text so you can look at it. I'm not going to read it all, but I'm going to have it in front of me because I looked it over, and so I know what's here, and so I'm not going to belabor every single point of this, but there's some interesting highlights. Oh, we're on the psalm here. Sorry. There we go. It's open. So he comes to Ahimelech, and this is the incident where he takes of the shewbread. Did you not hear what David did when he ate the shewbread, which was only lawful for the priest to eat? This is a point Jesus made about that. And so the priest here shares with David he asks him and all that. That's the part I was like, okay, let's not go into that because that's going to take up time. We're in the Psalms. And so anyways, he gets the sword of Goliath. He sort of equips himself and he gets feeding, and he also inquires of the Lord. And Ahimelech, the priest, goes along with it. You know what? Because as far as I can tell, Ahimelech was afraid of him at the meeting of David. Why are you alone and no one's with you? The king hath commanded a business. Let no man anything of the business whereof I send thee, and what I've commanded thee. I have appointed my servants such and such a place. And so there was something at David's coming that bothered Ahimelech. Probably the haste in which he was coming, because he's fleeing for his life. And he is the servant of David, but he is a priest. He probably has some sort of political savvy. But this is a slight untruth. It's a misrepresentation. He's fleeing for his life, So he was the servant of the king. He had commanded him a business. As far as this, is a bit of a. But the thing is, he keeps Ahimelech innocent by doing that to him. Because he figures if he doesn't know, he will be able to honestly say to the king, David told me this. And so David would take upon himself the blame for this. Because he knows the king's after him, and he's not going to be happy with anybody that helps him flee, even if they don't know. But if ignorance is a plea and it's a priest, it's like, But also, Ahimelech's not going to voluntarily tell the king about this when he finds out. So if nobody knows about it, Ahimelech, in that sense, doesn't have anything to worry about. Because Saul doesn't care. I'm trying to conceal the result of the story, but I realize we're not going to read the whole thing. So I'll tell you, in the end, what happens, he comes before Saul, and Saul doesn't believe him. Now, the reason he comes before Saul is because Doeg, the Edomite, is there. And it makes note of it, verse 7? A certain man, the servants of Saul, was there that day, detained before the Lord. I'm not sure exactly what that means. In fact, I should look, that would be more interesting than almost anything. Because, why was he detained before the Lord? I don't know. Do we stop and let's see. Because I have a paper Bible, I think mine will have maybe something on that. Detained before the Lord, verse 7. Well, I found it fast. That gives me encouragement. Detained. Probably from some ceremonial reason. Compare shut up from Jeremiah or a vow. Well, it could have been some sort of, thing like, I don't know. Maybe he was up to no good and being stopped because he was under suspicion for having broken a commandment, like stealing or or whatever. David seems to think he's not a very savory character. And he didn't, I don't think David initially knew that Doeg was there, because Doeg is the one who turns him in. Because the servants, he goes to Saul. And here where we go. Then answered Doeg the Edomite, which was set over the servants of Saul, and said, I saw the son of Jesse coming to Nob, to Ahimelech. And he inquired of the Lord for him, and gave him victuals, and gave him the sword of Goliath the Philistine. And then the king called Ahimelech before him. Saul's like, my son has stirred up my... Everyone knows Saul is kind of insane. And that Jonathan has not stirred David up against it. This is all just a fevered, jealous rage of his own devising. Saul is suffering from his own psychosis. Or whatever. There's an evil spirit tormenting him. And to me, that's like, yeah, it's some sort of, psyche is the word. Psyche is spirit, I think psyche is Greek spirit. So when I say psychosis, it's not far from saying oppression of evil spirits. Okay. Now, because there's something not right with him. Even though he's not himself. It's like that's what mental illness does to people. And it's like I don't know that to the degree there are truly spirits, but there's a wide array. The spiritual world is a very broad one. Anyways, he talks about the spirits that animals have a kind of spirit. They're not nothing like the spirit God gives to men, but they get the spirit of a dog. Because that's what that's the life that livens things. Down to the littlest things, Paul. I think the littlest things sort of have a spirit of their own. Even things like viruses, they're like almost like a spirit. They're like you can't even really see them, but they have they have an effect on people, don't they? Especially when they give them names and stuff. It's kind of interesting. So, and then he calls Ahimelech, and then he basically, he's like, what do I know? He's one of your servants. He had kind of, his conscience had told him there was something up, but he took David's word for it. But this Doeg, and then Saul calls upon his servants to slay the priests, and none of them would do it. But Doeg will. And there are 85 priests slain. All right. 85 men in a white ephod. And then he fell on the priests. And then he had them go to the city of the priests and smite with the edge of the sword both men and women, children and sucklings, and oxen and asses, and just kill everything. Just go, go full genocide. Not just genocide, but just like wipe them off the earth, even their animals. Just kill everything you find. That was a way of like sort of sending a message. It's like, look, everything's dead. People would see that, hear about it. It's brutal. That's the brutality of the ancient world. Just senseless. Senseless. But no, there's a sense to it, actually. No, it's not. It feels senseless, though. It's like, why? Why kill all the animals? Well, it sends a message. Wow. You walk by, like, they didn't even spare the beasts or eat them. They left all. They slew all. They burned all. It was, there was some. There is definitely a purpose in that. In fact, you don't do that without a purpose. If you do it without a purpose, then you're just a beast. And not worse than, you're less than that if you don't have a purpose. There's purpose in it. A wicked, evil purpose. In this case, for sure. But the Lord had commanded similar things. I won't say he didn't. But let's read David's thing. The Lord has commanded similar things. And how can I teach you the Bible and not tell you that? And how can I teach this psalm? Remember the psalm we just read. Thou hast done it. And David said to Abiathar, this one got me. I was like, wow, this is heavy. David said unto Abiathar, that was the one remaining priest of the house of those priests, or whatever. It wasn't like the last priest on planet Earth, but that city of the priests there. Ahimelech in his house, that was the high priest of that moment. And Abiathar showed David that Saul had slain the Lord's priest. He was the one who escaped. And then David said to Abiathar, I knew it that day, when Doeg the Edomite was there, that he would surely tell Saul, I have occasioned the death of all the persons of thy father's house. Abide thou with me, fear not. For he that seeketh my life seeketh thy life. But with me thou shalt be in safeguard. That's kind of an interesting word. You will be in safeguard. All right. Where? Okay. I really would like to clear those sinuses a little bit or whatever. I don't think it's going to work. So, here we have the psalm. So, Maskil of David, I already did the moving of the chief musician. And down here, actually, I messed it up. I read the psalm, but I didn't move this. Because this is what my notes said to do. And I explained that in study 88. All right, Maskil, a psalm of David. When Doeg the Edomite, and we're just going to look at it like that. We'll probably look at it both ways. Maskil meaning instruction. It's an instructive song of David. When Doeg the Edomite came and told Saul. And said to him, David is coming to the house of Ahimelech. When on the occasion, thinking that, because that's what he said. I knew he'd tell Saul, and then what it resulted in is David is like, I have occasioned. And that's the proper way to say it. It's not, it isn't his fault. He doesn't even clearly, but I would feel terrible. Saul is unjustly pursuing David. David has only tried to serve him. And even when Saul begins to pursue him, David refuses to lift his hand against him. In fact, I was reading through it again just to familiarize myself with the whole context this morning. And there's this part where he says, where David, I forgot this verse, in 23, which I thought was interesting, which he talked about as the ancient proverb. Oh, I didn't even mark the verse. Wait. I think it's actually 24. Which is because I was reading far afield here. Yeah. As the proverb, let's see, 24 verse 13. There we go. The Lord judge between me and thee, and the Lord avenge me of thee. But my hand shall not be upon thee. As saith the proverb of the ancients, wickedness proceedeth from the wicked, but mine hand shall not be upon thee. Just like the Lord judge between me and thee. It's kind of like the wicked will tell, but I will refrain from myself becoming the wicked in order to stop them. It's like, because it's an indication of faith, but I will not resort to the same violence that the wicked do. That's why I really object to the use of torture by America, even things like waterboarding or any kind of tormentive type extraction from prisoners of this and such information, because it's like, oh, but they're terrorists. Well, that's what they're saying about the Canadian truckers. They're terrorists. Should they be waterboarded then to tell them who gave them the money? Doesn't that justify their waterboarding? They've been declared terrorists by the government. And one of the things in the Revolutionary War, we did not mistreat British prisoners, and that was intentional. It was not something that just always got done. We insisted upon it. At least Washington did. It was about being honorable, and it's like, and that's part of what we believe in, or we should. It's like, no, we don't torture prisoners, and certainly someone who hasn't been convicted of a crime can't be punished. I suppose, they make shows like 24, which sort of propagandize you into thinking of torture in terms of an action movie. It's like, oh, you bust in the room, they're making the bomb, and the ticker's going down. What do? Read them their Miranda rights? Yeah, I get it. No, I agree. I understand. In those moments, there's a different set of instructions. You know, it's one thing when the Lord delivers Saul into David's hand, because he said this on the occasion when Saul came into the cave to use to relieve himself, and David and his men are all in there, and the king's alone, and they could tell he's in their power completely, and David, instead of taking advantage of the situation by striking Saul down, he takes a piece of his robe, and then he feels bad about it, but he tells Saul. He goes out and he comes to him and he even bows as before time, as always, because he's like, I'm your servant. And anyways, and there's a sort of a brief sort of detente, or is that the right word for it? Whatever. I don't want to be all fancy, but it just sprung into my mind, like an easing of tensions. Anyways, because I think that's what that meant. But whatever. I'm thinking of an easing of tensions, because I don't think there was like this restoration at that point. I didn't continue reading, and we're not going to, pardon me if I got it a little wrong there. But anyways, but this notion that he would not, now if Saul had come into the heat of battle, had come at David with a sword, David would defend himself. He wouldn't just like lay there because he's fleeing. He tries to save his own life, but he won't lift his hand against the king, because the king is the Lord's anointed. That's David's consistent thing. He will not strike at the king. But, there are many things he will do to save himself. He won't just let the king kill him and all that. But, that attitude of the wicked will do what the wicked do. They will cross lines I won't cross. You know what I mean? They will do things I'm not willing to do. I won't do what the wicked do. It's like David will seek a way to be avenged of Saul, but he will not himself be wicked in finding that revenge, like sneaking up stealthily on someone in the dark and stabbing them in the back while they're relieving themselves. The king, David, the thought of striking down the king in such it was a temptation to lower himself, to become, and we read David, Psalm 51 came first, but this is a very, passionate moment, because it occasioned the death of so many people and children and women and and all that. And Doeg led that also. He was the one who led the attacking the city of the priests. There were a number of cities of the priests, by the way. There were cities dedicated to the priests, where they would all they were designated in the I forgot what they designated, but the law said that they should designate. Or was it in the book of Joshua as they were taking the land? I forgot exactly where it's designated, but there were cities of the priests. That is no doubt, yes, that is factual. Many of them. Well, a number. There was I think there was whatever. There was a number of them all throughout, so that there were priests to serve all Israel. Because though they did not go up to Jerusalem you can't, it's like you have to travel there. It can't be done on a day-to-day basis. They would have priests locally that would serve the people. So when Doeg the Edomite came and told Saul and said unto him, David is come to the house of Ahimelech. Why boastest thou thyself in mischief, O mighty man? The goodness of God endureth continually. Because Doeg, all the other people who were there, Doeg, just the thing is, David is not, this guy is doing this to advance himself with Saul. He's not doing, he knows Saul's nuts and he wants to destroy David, but yet he's feeding that. He's like, he sees an opportunity. He's an opportunist. Yeah, I saw Ahimelech. Give him he's got all the details, and Saul, and Saul, we didn't read the part, but Saul does not accept Ahimelech's excuse. I mean, you can read it yourself, that he, well, I didn't know. And he didn't say, surely you know. He was just like, you are surely a betrayer, and you give him this and that and the other. He said, you and all your father's house shall die. What was his, I almost want to go and get it all, but that's what we're doing the psalm. But it's about what Doeg did. It's not, what Saul did is one thing, but it's about this guy Doeg. You know, he is not, he's not unwilling to do things that are exceedingly opportunistic and wicked. And I love the part, well, whatever. It's a short psalm. You know, but he boasts himself in mischief. You know, he's mighty in mischief. Mischief is not, let's see what the word is in Hebrew. Which word for evil? Because, like I said, mischief to us sounds like Dennis the Menace. Oh, Dennis the Menace. He's always getting into mischief, you know. That wacky, whatever. He's not wacky. He's what? That charming little scamper or whatever. Where is it? Mischief. Boast. I remember when I looked into words like boast. The word boast, like this shows like why sometimes this whole business of looking into the language is kind of like a lot of time for very little gain. Because it means to shine, right? That's where they get halal, shine. Also destruction, because such things are the destruction. Those it is a destruction also. It is an opening. It is a vulnerability. In Job, they look at the perverse things. Oh, it's hard to see. Let me bring it in a little bit. There we go. Job 6:30. Discern perverse things. I mean, perverse doesn't mean like we think perverted, but it means like crooked. But perverted means that we've put that word like seduce into a little box, and perverted means sexually perverted. But it was good. It used to have more meaning because you could have some, you know, like the perversion of justice, we can still say, but, you know, you don't usually use that adjective pervert or perversion. That's actually a verb. You don't use that generally outside of certain contexts. You know, it doesn't usually stand alone very well because just like mischief, you know, nowadays it's just not that way. So they got calamity, destruction, calamity. I like the idea of a pit as being a calamity, like an opening in the earth, like a great chasm. So from hava, in the sense of eagerly coveting and rushing upon, hava, which means what? Desire. So the way they actually come at it, you know, because like I said, that's just me, like you can see. Because that's why I said you can see how this goes, how that could be connected, like desire, chasm, to gape or yawn. Primitive, so supposed to mean properly to breathe. Say hava, like meaning that's like a summary of Strong's or something. That's kind of weird. I wrote it down because that is not the complete old definition. To fall, and this one is desire, chasm, destruction. I don't know. To me, the idea of falling and then desire, that is not the same word in Hebrew. That word and that word are not the same. You boast yourself in evil. Your tongue devises calamity, like a sharp razor, working deceitfully. You lovest evil more than good. You know, I kind of want to know, like, is that the same word? Is he going back to it? Whatever, it's all right. It's not that it has to be the same, but it's like when they translate them the same and then different, it's a little bit annoying because I'd like to see how I'd like to have some, even if it wasn't the words meant the same thing, like if it was just consistent, I'd appreciate that. That's one of my complaints about the King James, the inconsistency. But then it would kind of ruin the flow of it, I suppose, because when you read it, it sounds good. Most of the time. Some verses are just awful. They're just clunky and bad. A few. Thou lovest evil more than good, and lying rather than to speak righteousness. Now, you could say, well, he was telling the truth. Yeah, but he was telling the truth in service to a lie. You know what I mean? Telling the truth in service to a lie, it is better to keep silence than to reveal, than to betray the innocent. To betray the innocent is a wicked, unrighteous thing. And to destroy he betrayed the innocent, and then he followed through and then just slew and slew and slew merely for the purpose of his own advancement. With no, we talked about David's sin with Uriah and his wife and all that, and it was a thing of passion initially, and the whole thing it was a bit passionate because he was fearful of getting caught and of what it might do. And this guy has no motivation other than his own gain. Just for his own gain. And the world is filled with this. People who are out for only their own gain. You love all devouring words. And I've always said that there are some people who will argue with you and they don't care. They just burn everything down as they go. You know what I mean? I'm like, I don't want to have a discussion with you. I've had people not online where I'm just like, I'm not going to talk to you because you're just constantly insulting. We're not having a conversation. I'm not here to just be insulted by you. If you want to talk to me, that's a privilege that I grant some people that they may have a conversation with me. Otherwise, I don't speak to you. I ignore you and I turn my back on you. Or as far as I'm not going to listen to people who merely are they'll say things that just aren't true. You think this and that, and it's like, well, wait a second. And if they don't give you a minute, if someone just is going to insist on being disagreeable, I only have to live peaceably with all men as much as it is possible. And that is also I live peaceably with all men in terms of, I mean that in terms of physical violence. That I am a very peaceful man. I have been most of my adult life a peaceable man. Certainly, having children has mellowed me from my hot-headed youth. But even so, it's I do try to have peace with men, even verbally. I don't think the sword of the mouth should be wielded, and that's why I'm saying this, because I don't think we should use our tongues, and it says here, just wantonly to destroy. Because his tongue was the worst destruction of all, Doeg's tongue. Tattletale tongue. You know what I mean? Being a tattletale to try to, get yourself in good with authority. I remember my grandmother was a teacher, and she told me that was one thing she hated a lot. And so whenever someone would be a tattletale, she'd be like, as far as if she could tell they were trying to, this is what they did. And, being kind of like a little tattletale, she would say, well, what do you think should happen to them? And then she would proceed to make that punishment happen to the tattletale. I don't know how that worked out. I never asked her, well, what kind of punishment? It was probably, write sentences 10 times or something. I don't know. I doubt it was, well, here's the thing. Imagine if when Nathan came to David, David volunteered. He will die, He will die. That was his judgment of himself. What should happen to him? I'm glad, I try to keep an eye out for hypocrisy, lest I should be condemned of my own judgment, I probably am in some way. I mean, there was because if I look at myself, if 10 years ago or 15 years ago, if I take a snapshot of what I was saying, what I was thinking, it's I don't know. It's not always going to match up. If I go back 15, 20 years, well, it's all in the past. Well, it's every idle word men will give account thereof in judgment. It's only because of the blood of Christ that I can have any confidence that I can stand before God and he's actually going to see me as being clean. That's actually the only way. I really don't have any other hope in that regard. But still, this kind of grotesque evil, this is the kind of thing we need to learn to look out for in ourselves. That kind of hypocrisy, that sort of self-serving truth-telling that is really a deceit and a lie. Because it's when the lie you're telling is that there's any virtue in what you're doing by harming people who have done no evil. and done you no harm, but merely for your own profit. It's disgusting. God shall likewise destroy thee forever. He shall take thee away and pluck thee out of thy dwelling place and root thee out of the land of the living. Selah. The righteous also shall see and fear and laugh at him. Okay. I like that part. That's probably been one to talk about from the beginning of the study. Like with the righteous laugh. But God shall destroy thee forever. That is, I take that is what I think the true end of the wicked is destruction forever. It does not mean he will torture you forever. That is a bizarre literalist interpretation of the symbology of Revelation, in my estimation, where it talks about the end of the wicked, where it really seems like just a logical, if you didn't know better, you'd think it said that the wicked were going to perish out of existence. If you didn't know better, if they hadn't told you better, here's this thing. I'll tell you, I was talking to my wife the other day and I said, I sometimes I think, is belief in hell a test? Are you going to stand before God? I mean, I don't know. I often act like the belief in eternal torture is, I'll say, like, I try to be nice because I know most Christians believe it, and I'm doing a Bible study. I'd like people to enjoy it without, like, being too much of a disagreeable, with doctrine and stuff like that, right? But the thing is, I've often said, it's like, well, if you believe in it, why don't you preach it with the same zeal I preach about what happens to the wicked? They're always apologetic for it. Why are you apologizing for it? It's like you're saying God's a real big, horrible, kind of fearsome, but he loves you. And, it's just like, why is it you can't come to grips with this? That basically you believe something awful about God. You think God would torture people forever. And you accept that and worship that God? What's wrong with you? And I think that's what he's going to say to you. What the hell is wrong with you? You worship a God. Well, it says so in the Bible. What's wrong with you? You actually didn't question that? You didn't question that? You didn't think maybe that's like beyond it? A little bit beyond the limit? And that's the wrong interpretation? And that accepting that as a sign of something wrong with you? It is. Repent. I mean, that's how I feel about it. And I like to be nice about it more often. I don't think you're going to hell per se. But it's just a funny thing to say at the end of that. Because I don't believe it doesn't mean you're not saved. But it's like, it's a kink in your character as far as I'm concerned. All right? You say, well, you're not interpreting the Bible properly. I say, hey, I've had textual debates, and I'd like to have a verbal one, but it's like, no one's ever asked, and I'm not a promoter of such things, I guess. I don't know. But anyways, hey, I mean, like, I don't know. The Lord asks Abraham to sacrifice his son, and he was pleased when he did. Maybe when God says, I'm going to torture everyone forever, and you say, amen, maybe just the fact that you're willing to take that literally and believe, wow, you think I'd even do that, and you still worship me. Maybe that's a virtue. I don't know. To me, it seems a bit wrong. Because I take that, I've said, though they will be blotted out, the idea of torture. Why do you torture people? Why does Jack Bauer torture people in 24? There's an old show now. But like, to extract the information. Where's the bomb? Where's it going off? What's the code? And it's like, so you get the wicked. And now we have the wicked under our power. We're going to get, what is the meaning of wickedness? Why are the evil this way? What's going on? All these questions you might ask. What I'm saying is, like, are we going to ask them to explain? No. We're going to look at their example. We're going to understand. We're going to go out and look at the carcasses, as Isaiah 66 says, of the men who have transgressed against God. Meaning, look at what remains, which is nothing more than carcasses. That's all that'll be in the world, is a carcass. There'll be no living example of the wicked to see. God will surely destroy them forever. Take them away. Pluck them out of their dwelling place. The idea of being plucked out. Root thee out of the land of the living. Branch and root out of the living. It is not just, yes, there is death. That is a metaphor for death. But death is the price. Death is the end. The second death is a death, just as you know what death is. It is the blackness of darkness forever. It is their thoughts perish. They have no thoughts. They have nothing. We have thoughts, and we torment them forever in that sense that we extract from them and from their lives whatever it was that God wanted to give his elect, in that he put us in a world with evil and to experience evil and to go through and to and for whatever purpose, but to raise up sons according to the way that he willed to do so, as it seemed right in God's sight. He does that, and the wicked are destroyed at the end. They're just put out, but they have a value, and there is a certain sort of meditative, forever and ever torment. That's the way I look at it symbolically. I do not think death is a metaphor or a symbol for eternal torture. Like it's like, oh, they're really being tortured, but we just call it the second death because it's a fate worse than death or something. Whatever. I don't buy it. The scripture, and I have a whole thing on my website if you disagree, on oraclesofgod.org. I didn't mean to digress heavily into that subject, but if you go to the studies page, down at the bottom, maybe I should just show you real quick because it's a long, big subject, and I said a lot there, and it might make people feel like, hey, the best thing I got on this subject is this discussion on the subject of hell. It's a 6 hour and 26 reading of a conversation that happened between me and a pastor. And there's also, he sent me some audio. It's audio between the two of us, long form. It's a long form debate where we each give each other points and we answer them. It's some people have found it very useful. So that's a 6 hour debate I had in this subject. Okay. If anyone go ahead and listen to my 6 hour debate on the subject of hell, which is a discussion. It wasn't like a cantankerous debate, like with ad hominem attacks and gotcha moments and all this nonsense. We wrote letters back and forth essentially using audio. Well, he was blind, and I didn't seriously do that. That's why it's in a sense more forgivable, because in ignorance. But at the same time, it's like, really? You just kind of accept that? I congratulate you for your tolerance. I don't know. I accepted it. I guess, yeah, I accept it. But I was a child. You accept everything you're told. But when you grow up, don't you question things? I questioned God because I wanted to have great faith in him. And I wanted to know why about certain things. So I looked to the scriptures and looked for answers. It wasn't hell I came questioning, though, actually. I didn't have any particular questions. My question was, what's in the Bible? When I started, I'm like, what's the Bible about? What does God want from me? Yeah, that was like, what is God? How am I going to serve God? What does he want? How do I learn? What is it? What does this all mean? Thou lovest evil more than good. And then lying rather than to speak righteousness. We got that verse, I think, right? Okay. Devouring words that devour, words that harm, words that bring about the downfall of others. God shall likewise destroy thee, for he shall take thee away, pluck thee. Okay. The righteous also shall see and fear and shall laugh at him. This is the man that may not, in the abundance of his riches, strengthen himself in his wickedness. They trusted in the things of the world. Cynical people who use this world to advance themselves in it and to obtain things unjustly or by, obviously by robbery and thievery, but also, they'll not have to rely on special interests. But the truth is, whether you get paid more or not, the thing is, there's always even more. I know there are people who make like 5 times what I make, but are living just as month to month as I do. You know what I mean? They're living month to month, and they have, $100,000 a year income, but they're extended on debts, and they live a lifestyle that eats up everything they have. Now, what I did is I just had a lifestyle, and I just filled it in with what I could to make sure it kept going. As opposed, I was like, this is the life we're going to live. But it's going to be a big one with a family. Families are expensive. But the point is, there is some expense, but it's like, but it's compared to the expense. When you're talking families, though expensive, well, food. Here's the thing. people, I get there are some luxuries that sort of, the bigger your family gets, certain expenses scale up pretty hard, like food and stuff like that. The price, the amount of money you pay is a lot, but other things like the house price stays the same. Your house is your house. Did I ever mention that I raised 8 kids in a 2-bedroom house? We'll call it a 3-bedroom because we have a really big closet that my daughter lives in. But it's fine. It's funny, right? Thankfully, those bedrooms are really big bedrooms. Okay. But, people don't make God their strength. Instead, but it's one thing when you just don't have God as your strength, but like trust in things and everything he provided is providing for. It's just not what he thought he was doing. He was providing for someone else. And his whole life was just dedicated to providing for someone else, not him. And it's like there's a tragedy in that. It's like we if we continually just, it's nothing wrong with like setting aside a little for the, I do believe in being responsible with your finances. It's like you shouldn't live month to month like I do if you can. It's just a choice I made. I won't someday. Someday I won't be living month to month anymore. I am like a green olive tree in the house. This results in, like, I have occasioned the death of all your father's house. Horrible. I will praise thee forever because thou hast done it. And I will wait in thy name for his good. Because he knows that, like, that God is working something. And people always, like, they don't get it. Because they think what he's working is some sort of immediate. I mean, sometimes there is immediate goodness and we enjoy it. But there's also in the immediate pain. Job suffered many things. David suffered many things. All the servants of God suffered many things. We suffer in our way. I mean, like I said, I don't think there's been a generation of men that have been so tempted, okay, by evil. I don't know. I don't know. The access and the ease. What generation of children had such access to many things, to things they should not. I mean, at their fingertips, potentially. If parents are not, and they're not very good at it, and they never are. You have to be extremely on the ball these days, especially if you send them to school. Forget it. I mean, I don't know. I do recommend skipping out in elementary school at least. As I let my daughter go this year to high school, and I kind of see why my other homeschooling friends have done that, and I say, oh, I get it. It's like they're more prepared than the other kids, and they're more mature than the other kids, and they handle it better than the other kids, and they're about ready to sit in a class. Unlike 9-year-old boys are not ready really for I don't know. Every child is different. That's the problem. It's like a one-size-fits-all solution for every child is not right. It's not going to work. It's going to leave some child behind. It's going to leave plenty of children behind. God has done this. This Mahalath, if this is truly the postscript for this psalm, it means with great dancings. Which is or it belongs with this psalm. Again, each one. Or was it dancings? I forgot. Well, I'm not gonna look it up. I'll look it up tomorrow. Time's up. Okay, so this is a pretty harrowing story. This guy is a very bad man. He thinks he can trust in the abundance of his riches in his wickedness. Because the psalm is like about more than Doeg. It's not like just Doeg, but it's when a man like Doeg, does Doeg-like things. That, self-serving, wicked, bringing about hurt to people who are innocent, absolutely rotten to the core type of person. Because that's terrible. How could you do that? Well, it's good for me. Like that man will not enter into God's kingdom. And God, God won't even show himself to these people often. I mean, if God shows them to himself, he can redeem such. It's not that they're irredeemable, but like such a position is irredeemable. You can't stay there. You have to move out of that. You can't be that man anymore. If someone is that man, I don't want to make anyone think like they're beyond redemption. You're not Doeg, but it's like if Doeg could see who he was, and regret his wickedness, then he wouldn't be Doeg. He wouldn't be that kind of wicked man. Why does God create such wicked men? Why does he let them exist? God didn't create wicked men. He never would have made me. If he didn't allow wicked men to exist, I wouldn't exist. Well, I may not be as wicked as Doeg. Where do I want him to draw the line? Right at me? Like I'm the one who's just righteous enough to deserve to live? I'm the one? Why me? And plus this, like, there are more righteous people than me who probably don't even exist. Who probably don't even get to see the light, haven't been blessed. I know there are. We wait upon the name of the Lord because in spite of the evil we see in the world, in spite of the wicked prospering, we know that God we trust in his mercy forever. That, just like, Abraham holding the knife over Isaac, he trusted the mercy of God. I will have a son. He said to kill him. And it's like, okay, and God stops him. He was willing because he trusted in the mercy of God. He trusted in God. Because God said he would have a son. It's like, you believe me? You trust me? Okay. And it's a hard thing. And, comedians have even made fun of it. And I get it. It's not untrue that it is one of the hard. But it's like, these are hard lessons. You want to inherit eternal life? Some people, no. Well, then it's no concern. But for those who do want to inherit eternal life, it's of great concern. We want to be pleasing to God. So, there is a certain malicious wickedness that is not acceptable before God. It's like, like I said, it's like we ought to examine ourselves for the hypocrisy and the self-servingness that, the people like Doeg exhibit. We don't want to be like that. That's got to be rooted out, because that is not the spirit of a Christian. All right. Thanks for joining me. We'll be back again tomorrow. Till then.
Why do the heathen rage and the people imagine a vain thing? The kings of the earth set themselves, the rulers take counsel together against Yahweh and against his anointed. Say, let us